Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. This week we're taking a look at the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's about a man who walks to the right while the entire town tries to kill him, and when they finally do, he turns into Mr. Hyde and runs left and can hurt people. No, wait, that was the terrible NES game. We're talking about the book, which is much, much better. Let's not waste any more time, and let's get straight to the book. The story begins in London with a man named Gabriel John Utterson, a prosecutor, who's on his weekly walk with his relative Richard Enfield, who proceeds to tell him of an encounter he had some months ago while coming home late at night from Cavendish. The tale describes a sinister figure named Edward Hyde, who tramples a young girl, disappears into a door on the street, and reemerges to pay off her relatives with £10 in gold and a cheque signed by the respectable gentleman Dr. Henry Jekyll for £90. Well, at least he's paying for the damages. Jekyll had recently and suddenly changed his will to make Hyde the sole beneficiary, because Hyde is actually his son! Just kidding. The actual reason is a lot weirder. And would make for a better episode of Jerry Springer. The development concerns and disturbs Utterson, who makes an effort to seek out Hyde. Makes sense. I mean, people do that all the time in real life. Upon finally managing to encounter Hyde, Hyde's ugliness, as if deformed, amazes Utterson. Whoa! And I thought the Frankenstein monster was ugly. Woohoo! Yeah, you make Quasimodo look like Fabio. Though Utterson cannot say exactly how or why, Hyde provokes an instinctive feeling of revulsion in him, much to Utterson's surprise. Hyde willingly offers Utterson his address. After one of Jekyll's dinner parties, Utterson stays behind to discuss the matter of Hyde with Jekyll. Utterson notices Jekyll turning pale, yet he assures Utterson that everything involving Hyde is in order and that he is to be left alone. Forget about Hyde. Just let him die. Just let the old man gather dust and have a fantastic life. A year passes uneventfully. One night, a servant girl witnesses Hyde beat a man to death with a heavy cane. The victim was Sir Danvers Carew, who was also Utterson's client. The police who suspect Hyde contact Utterson. He leads them to his apartment, feeling a sense of foreboding in the eerie weather. The morning is dark and wreathed in fog, although not the fog from Silent Hill. When they arrive at the door, the murderers vanished, but they find half of the cane left behind the door. It is revealed to have been given to Jekyll by Utterson. So Hyde stole the cane, right? But why would he want it? That was the worst weapon in the game! Shortly thereafter, Utterson again visits Jekyll, who now claims to have ended all relations with Hyde. Jekyll shows Utterson a note, allegedly written to Jekyll by Hyde, apologizing for the trouble that he has caused him, and saying goodbye. That night, however, Utterson's clerk points out that Hyde's handwriting bears a remarkable similarity to Jekyll's own. Of course, Hyde learned how to write by reading Jekyll's writing. That's the only possible answer. For a few months, Jekyll reverts to his former self, and he is more friendly and sociable, as if a weight has been lifted from his shoulders. Later, Jekyll suddenly starts refusing visitors, and Dr. Hasty Lanyon, a mutual acquaintance of Jekyll and Utterson, dies suddenly of shock after receiving information relating to him. Before his death, Lanyon gives Utterson a letter, with instructions that he doesn't open it until after Jekyll's death or disappearance. Utterson goes out walking with Enfield again, and they see Jekyll at a window of his laboratory. The three men start conversing, but a look of horror suddenly comes over Jekyll's face, and he slams the window and disappears. Soon after, Jekyll's butler, Mr. Poole, visits Utterson in a state of desperation, and explains that Jekyll has secluded himself for several weeks in his lab. Utterson and Poole travel to Jekyll's house through empty, windswept, sinister streets. Once there, they find the servants huddled together in fear. They go to see the laboratory, where they hear that the voice is coming from inside is not the voice of Jekyll, and the footsteps are light and not the heavy footsteps of the doctor. After arguing for a time, the two resolve to break into Jekyll's lab. Inside, they find the body of Hyde wearing Jekyll's clothes and apparently dead from suicide. They also find a letter from Jekyll to Utterson promising to explain the entire mystery. Utterson takes the document home, where he first reads Lanyon's letter and then Jekyll's. The first reveals that Lanyon's deterioration and eventual death resulted from the shock of seeing Hyde drink a serum, and as a result of doing so, turned into Dr. Jekyll. The second letter explains that Jekyll, seeking to separate his good side from his darker impulses, kind of like in The Nutty Professor, he discovered a way to transform himself periodically into a creature free of conscience, this being Hyde. The transformation was incomplete, however, in that it created a second evil identity, but did not make the first identity purely good. At first, Jekyll reports that he delighted in becoming Hyde and rejoiced in the moral freedom that the creature possessed. Eventually, however, he found that he was turning into Hyde involuntarily in his sleep, even without drinking the potion. That happened to me once. My alternate personality was a dog. That was some mess to clean up, and really hard to explain to the neighbors. At this point, Jekyll resolved to cease becoming Hyde. One night, however, the urge gripped him too strongly, and after the transformation, he immediately rushed out and violently killed Danvers Carew. Horrified, Jekyll tried more adamantly to stop the transformations, and for a time he proved successful in engaging in philanthropic work. One day at a park, he considered how good a person he had become as a result of his deeds, believing himself redeemed. However, before he completed the line of thought, he looked down at his hands and realized that he had suddenly transformed into Hyde, and this was the first time that the involuntary metamorphosis happened while he was awake. Far from his lab and hunted by the police, Hyde needed Lanyon's help to get his potions and become Jekyll again, undertaking the transformation in Lanyon's presence, the shock of which instigated the deterioration. Meanwhile, Jekyll returned to his home, only to find himself ever more helpless, and trapped as the transformations increased in frequency and necessitated even larger doses of potion in order to reverse it. It was the onset of one of these spontaneous metamorphoses that caused him to slam the laboratory window shut in the middle of the conversation with Enfield and Utterson. Eventually, the stock of ingredients he has been using to create the potion ran low, and the subsequent batches that were made from newer material failed to produce the same effect as the original. Jekyll speculated that the one essential ingredient that made the original work must have been some contaminant that didn't exist in the new ones. After sending his butler Poole to one chemist after another to get the salt, only to find it wasn't working, he assumed that no ingredient could ever replicate the same effect. His ability to change back from Hyde into Jekyll had slowly vanished in consequence. Jekyll wrote that even as he had composed the letter, he knew that he would soon become Hyde permanently, having used the last of the salt, and wondered if Hyde would face execution for the crimes or choose to murder himself. Jekyll noted that in either case, the end of his letter marked the end of his life and the end of Dr. Henry Jekyll. He ended the letter by saying, "I bring the life of that unhappy Henry Jekyll to an end." With those words, both the document and the novella come to a close. That was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it's awesome. It's really cool to watch the battle between a man and a monster. It's kind of like the Incredible Hulk, really, except, less destroying buildings. And it's awesome to see him battling the alternate personality, and it's overall a great tale. If only that NES game had been a bit better. Next week, something completely different. answering a question for me? Why do you even try? What do you mean? All this. You've never done anything. Bullshit. I've saved this universe twice. One from my mirror soul, and then from Mike Sano. Not really. The first time, the universes were mended by a scientist version of you, who was much smarter. And the second time, Mike Sano was trapped behind a force field by Maverick, and Maverick threw him in prison. You were the distraction, the bait, if you will. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! Or what? Kill you! Ah! What's wrong? He was taunting me again. I have a plan. I was developing a brain scanner to scan my brain for the dimensional coordinates of the universe that I was in when I got split by the transporter. But I can repurpose it to scan your brain for whatever's going on. Okay then. When will it be ready? 2 weeks at best. It's already a piece of crap it would have had it at now, and I need to make a matter replicator to get all the necessary parts. So at least a week, and building it will be another. I'll try to make do until then, but thanks, I really appreciate it. Happy to help.